3 times the heavyweight title has been a fixation for Anthony Joshua. But let's talk about 3 times the road to Undisputed, in which Joshua has assisted in making others heavyweight champion of the world. Anthony Joshua has been closer to the 3 times world champion that he coveted being than he knows. And it all has started with his March 2016 victory over Prince Charles Martin. In a coup of sorts, his promoter, Matchroom, assisted in him becoming a heavyweight champion very early in his career without facing the necessary tasks and challenges. His first real challenge came when he faced late substitute Andy Ruiz Jr. back in June of 2019 at Madison Square Garden, his debut in America, and it was an opportunity for him to show the world who he was. But it didn't work out that way for Joshua because the heavyweight titles that he had in his possession, the IBF, the IBO, and WBO world titles, were given away to Andy Ruiz after he dropped Ruiz early in the 3rd round of the fight, only to have Ruiz to rise and drop him twice in the 3rd and then twice more in the 7th round. It was a knockdown, drag-out fight of epic proportions for those in attendance, but also a strange way of seeing how the fight would play out because we had been sold that this was the new heavyweight of this generation. It was an interesting situation to say the least, but to see Joshua on the canvas by the pudgy Andy Ruiz, who came in weighing 268 pounds in that fight. He was the late substitution for the Jarrell Big Baby Miller, who tested positive for several performance-enhancing drugs. So Matchroom combed through the lineup of heavyweights and figured that for Joshua's American debut, this would be a perfect foil. Well, he was, but he foiled Joshua's debut. Joshua seemingly has never been the same since this fight, but he made history in this match because Andy Ruiz Jr. became the first Mexican-American heavyweight champion of the world. There had been plenty of Mexican fighters to compete in the heavyweight division. However, this was an unexpected situation, and Ruiz celebrated in kind. Though the rematch between the two would be scheduled just 6 months later, Ruiz came into that fight 300 pounds, and so away went the title. But Joshua created the first historical Mexican heavyweight champion in that fight. Next was a situation after a few defenses and a little bit of inactivity. Joshua thought a good name for his record, or at least his people thought a good name for his record would be Alexander Usyk. A perfect storm. Their fight was tabbed. And in September of 2021, Usyk, a former cruiserweight undisputed champion, entered this bout as an underdog because of his size. Joshua being 6'6" and 240 pounds. Usyk was a mere 6'2.5", 221 pounds, and a southpaw to boot. A former Olympian and a fighter with a pedigree that Joshua really hadn't faced professionally, Usyk was able to outbox Joshua, and late in the fight, Joshua seemingly had run out of steam, and it looked like Usyk may be on his way to either dropping him, if not stopping him. Joshua couldn't wait for the final bell in that fight, which rang early, by the way, when the timekeeper rang that bell after they removed the clock from the screen. It was an interesting situation yet again, and Usyk made history becoming the second cruiserweight undisputed to go to heavyweight since Evander Holyfield to become unified heavyweight champion, because Joshua was not undisputed. But here and yet again, we have Joshua making history for another instead of himself. There is a pattern here where we've seen him do these things, but there has been no accountability. One of the major points is Joshua has not gotten better as his career has commenced. He has made changes, but they haven't been for the better. And when you look at a fighter like Usyk, who is an accomplished fighter, both amateur and professional, the approach to that fight, plus the rematch, which Joshua lost also, and his temper tantrums, psychological breakdowns at the press conference, crying, throwing the belts out of the ring, going on some type of rant, grabbing the microphone after the match with Usyk, who seemed to be befuddled by it all because English is not his first language. But he still made the history books. And Joshua is responsible for making Usyk the unified champion for the second time in history, from cruiserweight to heavyweight. You see, there is something that people are not paying attention to. It's seemingly like those around him, because he haven't fought the real tough competitive fights of his reign, he's fighting other men who have been in a position of opportunity, and they have snatched it by the throat. That brings us to his most recent fight in September 21st of 2024, where he took on Daniel Dubois, IBF crowned champion, due to an eliminator fight victory over Filip Hrgović just months earlier. Joshua, the heavy favorite over Dubois, but Dubois has a history of working with Joshua in the gym, going back to when he was a much younger fighter and prior to becoming prominent in the pros. It is said that he gave Joshua all that he could handle in sparring, and so now the two would meet with the jewelry on the line. And Dubois had vowed to come in and show Joshua that he's a man and not a child anymore. Joshua's camp was overconfident due to seeing film of Filip Hrgovic's success with right hands landed at will on Dubois' chin, and feeling that Joshua, who can punch right hand wise and with combinations a lot better than Filip Hrgovic, they felt that it would just be a matter of time. But Daniel Dubois was well prepared for this fight, and he showed a lot of things that many didn't expect him to bring to the ring. and aggressiveness behind a solid jab, counterpunching, throwing his punches in combination, catching Joshua early, who was listless and seemingly distracted. Joshua didn't have his hands up against a man who could knock your head to the moon. And as early as the first round, that's exactly what Daniel Dubois did to him. Joshua touched the canvas in the first round, and he also saw the canvas in the third, fourth, and fifth and final rounds as well. There was something about this fight that really certified what Joshua does. He's the maker of champions, and he has willingly given all this up to fighters who were not expected to do it to him. Remember the Deontay Wilder fight. One fight that was right there for Undisputed, and Joshua didn't take the fight. I don't know if it was for fear. I don't know if it was just bias and prejudice. I don't know, but his legacy could have been cemented in that opportunity, because win, lose, or draw, you would have had the chance to face another fighter for Undisputed. And now that's gone by the wayside. And you have many times now ended up on your backside. You see, you can run, as Joe Louis once said, but you cannot hide in that square jungle called the boxing ring. And so now Daniel Dubois joins the likes of Alexander Usyk and Andy Ruiz Jr. as conquerors of Anthony Joshua. And while all of his followers and pundits try to make excuses for what happened, they are remiss to deal with one fact about it all. He's simply not that good. And I don't say that to be disrespectful. I say it out of the observations of witnessing what has transpired to this degree. The titles can change hands, but legacy is an ongoing thing. And because Anthony Joshua has made some terrible decisions with his career and has been misguided also and given ill advisement, he is taking a back seat, and that vision of 3 times seems far in the distance. But on 3 times, he has given other fighters the opportunity to become world champion. Maybe he'll be a better promoter than he is a fighter, because that's what promoters do. They put guys in a position to become a world champion. But there is still one more move that can be made by Joshua, and that is to go humble himself. That's right, I said humble himself, because he is quite lofty in thoughts and reflections of where he is. The people around him have been disingenuous, and he really knows what he needs to do deep down. You're either going to fight for it, or you're going to continue to ride this wave of pretend, and that won't lead you or net you much more than heavy criticism. But what do you think? This is Stormy B-Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know your thoughts about 3 times AJ awarding someone else the victory to become heavyweight champion. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.